Hello and welcome to the Philosophy Podcast, a weekly podcast whose mission is multifaceted. Each week when you tune in, you will find episodes that question best practices, challenge music education dogma, facilitate conversations about touchy topics, demonstrate pedagogies, and conversations where colleagues learn from each other. This is episode 273, Applying the Whole Language of Music. Pedagogy, it could be argued, is a meaningless academic fantasy if it isn't proficiently applied. In music, we can do all the, quote, right methods, all the correct things that are trendy at the conventions and all of that. We can do the Solfege, we can do the Takadimi, the count singing, but does it matter if they can't pick up a piece of music and go learn it? In this next iteration of the First Days of Choir series, inspired by Harry Wong's educational text, The First Days of School, we get to be a fly on the wall during a discussion that I had with a group of teachers not too long ago in a professional development session. We can start the year off right and still lose momentum if we are not, A, assessing for understanding from the students and their proficiency that they're reaching, and B, showing kids that they can apply the skills that they are learning academically, quote unquote, all from within the first semester. They can start to apply those in future semesters. So here in this episode, we're going to unpack what I mean by whole language proficiency and the auditory skills that we want to develop with kids. One of the biggest misunderstandings that colleagues have with my advocacy for reading is that they think that reading is like antithetical to the ear, and we should do both. And of course, I think for anyone who's rehearsed a cappella in their choirs, exclusively a cappella for any amount of time, you know it is an auditory skill to be able to do what I'm talking about. It is both. You have to be able to hear the music happening in your head, hear it externally, and also read the music. So I will emphasize the importance of student-led sectionals, individual assessments, and creating a supportive learning environment to build confidence and resilience in young musicians. The discussion also covers grading philosophies, addressing student anxiety when they're asked to sing by themselves, and that is still something that I think is crucial. In any kind of class, students deserve to be individually assessed. And in a singing class, that includes singing. And so we talk about that and integrating sight reading into rehearsals to enhance overall performance and learning outcomes. At the end, you will even hear a portion of my rehearsal bootcamp that I love to do with teachers when I'm doing workshops to have them feel these processes firsthand. And of course, you can have me come out to your school or to your choir or to your school district to do workshops just like this. All you have to do is go to philosophy.com and search my menu bar, and you'll find out how to do that. So tune in and have your thinking stimulated and challenged. Then, of course, weigh in yourself with your related ideas. Have you ever tried some of the things you hear me talking about in this episode? Or have you tried them for the first time because you heard them on this episode? Well, I want to hear about that over in the Choirolophers Facebook page or on Substack at choirolosophy.substack.com. On the Substack, make sure you've subscribed. There's a lot of free blogs that are coming out there now. I'm coming out with another one that might push the envelope just a little bit very soon. It's a blog called What is Music Education For? So you're not going to want to miss that one. It will be on the free side of the blog. Choir directors, music educators, show planners, you pour your heart into your music. Shouldn't your events get the same attention? That's where Ludus comes in. Sell tickets, promote your concerts, and fundraise with ease. Selling merchandise and concessions? Ludus Retail makes in-person sales effortless. Running choir camps or workshops? They have a classes feature that keeps registration simple, and when you need help, the live support team is ready to pop up with real answers from real people. The best part? It's completely free for organizations. Thousands of music programs already trust Ludus because great music deserves more than just a ticketing system. Ensemble trips can be more than just a performance. They can build community, inspire artistry, and give students a reason to stay invested. That's why I recommend Kaleidoscope Adventures. For more than 30 years, Kaleidoscope has helped student groups travel with purpose, combining performance opportunities with experiences that deepen musical understanding and create lifelong memories. They'll help you find the right destination, the right venue, and the right balance of music, education, and fun. And they manage the planning from start to finish so you can focus on your job as an educator. To explore options for your choir, visit mykatrip.com or find the link in the show notes. A big shout out goes to the producers and Inner Circle over at the Patreon page. These are folks that are really dedicated to keeping the lights on here at this show. Venture Studios, Chandler Smith, Brian Long, Michael Herron, Kyle Peterson, Steve and Kathy Kakachik, David Kowalczyk, Max Jackson, Angie Schilling, Rebecca Chalk, RJ McCracken, Michael Shimp, and Kyle Siddons. All right, you guys about ready to dig back in? Okay. I have to be the bad guy, I guess, today. Make everybody come back from break and learn stuff. All right. Well, I'm gonna just go ahead and jump back in then, and we might have some Sight Reading Factory playtime later. So right when we finished before break, we were talking about end of first semester for beginning level class. The one thing I wanted to get into here before I leave that topic is that typically by a semester, and this is again assuming we were just talking over here about kids that don't get everyday instruction for a semester, obviously that's going to have to be, the timeline that I just showed you would have to get tweaked based on, do I even see the kids every day? Because obviously I don't think I would be able to achieve everything that we achieve in the amount of time we do if I had every other day choir. My everyday rehearsals are very helpful to this because they get a routine that they can practice every single day. However, my goal for my groups anyway, by the end of a semester, is that they are starting to approach some type of what I call whole language proficiency, which means that they can not only sing things that they see, they can sing things they hear, they can tell me what they just heard, they can diagnose things like whether or not the note they just sang was me or was it Ray, those types of things. Very simple. Like, we're not talking about like college level, auditory skills classes or anything like that, but they're getting to the point where they can think about music from multiple different directions, and they can talk about it from multiple directions. Like, well, was that a vocal issue that caused that wrong note, or was that I just didn't hear the note in my head problem? They actually start to get pretty good at saying, I just wasn't audiating. All right, let's do it again. I just wasn't audiating. Or I wasn't connected to the breath, and that's why it was wrong. And because what I try to do from the very beginning of the year is I try to make them be the ones that say all those things. And yes, will I guide them towards being able to diagnose that? Of course. But I don't want to be the teacher that walks around and says, altos, that note's wrong. Sopranos is breathy. Tenors, you're flat. That's not my style, but I also don't think it's very conducive to long-term learning. So it's really more about here's a very common occurrence that happens in my classroom. We'll sing through a portion of a song we're learning, and it sounds like total trash. It's absolutely terrible. And it's hard to even pinpoint how bad it was and for what reasons. And so I will stop, and I'll just say, what'd you guys hear? What's going on? What do you hear? And then all those answers start to come out. But again, it turns the responsibility around to them. And that's what I mean by whole language proficiency. We are having conversations about the music as we are trying to make it. Students have gained confidence reading, both in group and in individual work by this point. Reverse sight reading is just a goofy little term that I use for what we did before, which is like I hear the notes and I write them down. So it's like, I just call it reverse sight reading because it's like the same thing but backwards. We know that they are ready to move on to more advanced things when the mistakes are readily identified. So if we're ready to move on to level 5, we're ready to move on to harder repertoire, etc. I know that because of how quickly or not they are recognizing their mistakes and pointing them out correctly. That's a super important big turning point that I look for in every group that I teach. They're going to decide when we're moving on to harder things, and they're not going to decide because they just want to sing that cool song that they heard their friends sing. We're going to move on when you guys are calling out all these things. And one of the ways that I do that a lot is by having student-led sectional time. So one of my activities, I do have an episode about this where I just talk about student-led sectionals. I won't go all the way into it here today because that's not the point. But the kids do have to be taught gradually, a little bit at a time, how to do like concrete steps when a teacher's not present to get stuff done. So one of the ways that we baby step them into that is, let's say I had a group and they're 9th graders and they're reading this exercise, and we go through it, and inevitably in first semester they will mumble through a lot of it. The boys won't get into their head voice, so they won't get those high notes to come out. The basses will usually go into some kind of breathy woofy as they go lower. All those things will happen. And then I'll just say, so we'll read through it once, and I'll say, go into your circles, fix problems for 30 seconds. And then they're trained by that point to jump in and just start finding the tricky parts and trying to sing them again. 30 seconds is up, sing your starting pitch, 1, 2, ready, go. And it's better every time. It's not perfect, but it's better. And then we're done with sight reading for the day. That's essentially how much time it takes every day for us to do this. So sometimes I think people think that I work on Sight Reading Factory all day long in my classes, probably just because I'm trying to sell Sight Reading Factory online. But of course, it's about 5 minutes of class every day. And the rest of that is us then taking those skills into our rehearsals, which we'll get to before lunch today. All right. So I mentioned already throwing wrenches at kids. Of course, that is a metaphor, just To be clear, I do not actually throw wrenches at them, but just constantly trying to do things that will make the reading harder for them. And it's not because I'm trying to be ornery, it's because I'm trying to keep the lack of predictability going, where they can't just fall into autopilot mode and just sing the thing that they learn. So one of my favorite ones, let's say, for example, if I was teaching in this classroom, if I was in your classroom, I would have my sight reading factory up here, and I would have them reading, and I might have the remote control, and I might just turn it off and then turn it back on while they're reading. That's one of my favorite ones. And that's a great one because then that helps them understand actually that they are still reading even when the screen goes off. And then we point out how, like, you do that when you're reading English too. You're actually reading ahead. You don't realize you're doing it, but that's a good sign that you're doing the right thing. And then now they actually think it's kind of fun. So they get, like, they'll know that I'm doing it. They'll see me grab the remote control, so now I have to kind of try to hide that I have it and try to surprise them. So throwing wrenches at them just means that I'm constantly coming up with ways to trick them, and with the goal that eventually they're not trickable anymore. Sight reading sectionals I mentioned already. Advancing the concepts of vocal pedagogy during the literacy work by the end of the first year. Like I said at the beginning, we are never just sight reading. What is the O vowel in do supposed to sound like? Are we agreeing? Does it match? Is it in tune? Is it resonant? Is it beautiful? Did you sing that line, even line of sight reading factory music? Did you sing it like it was the most beautiful, meaningful song you've ever sung? Like, we can work on all that stuff during that 5 minutes every day. And it's starting to teach them habits of singing. Advancing expectations by the end of the first year, we will start sight reading in mixed formations. Usually by the end of the first year, you're now sight reading a part that is different than the person you're standing next to. But of course, these are not beginning of the year activities. They're things we work towards over the course of time. So by the time we get to the end of a school year, my 9th graders are typically at sight reading factory level 5. Sometimes we have level 6 kids, but over the course of a year, again, they go from truly beginners, and this happens every single year, predictable like clockwork. They go from this and really struggling for like sometimes 10 or 15 minutes is what it takes to get through that exercise the very first day of school. And they get here in one school year. And that's, again, with no one asking them to sing a cappella before this point ever in their life. And all of those rehearsals and all of those notes and rhythm acquisition and fluency, etc., is acquired completely a cappella. Yeah.
Is this the choir sight reading levels?
Yep. Yeah. So I don't do any of the as far as our daily exercises. I'm always using the choir levels. The solo levels, of course, I mentioned earlier. We're also having the kids reading outside of class on their own. And part of their, which I'm going to be getting to actually next, of how I grade that kind of thing. So it works together. It's like the algebra classic example I gave before. If we only read as a group, then I really do worry that the kids who get it faster are the ones who are doing all the work, and then the other kids get left behind, and then they feel like, I can't do this. And even if they're having fun in the class, they don't see themselves as integral to the music making process, because they know, the kids are smart, they know it's that loud kid next to me who's in band. They know, and whether we pump them up or not, they still know that concert was made by Band Girl, and I just was along for the ride. And so we do the group work, of course, but we also do the individual work for that reason, because I want every single kid in my class to feel like they can do this. And that does become the culture. My advanced group, my advanced SATB, they all go through one of these beginning level classes first. So they start in beginning tenor bass or beginning soprano alto. And by the time they get to our advanced group, they individually can all read a sight reading factory level 4 or higher by themselves. All 80 of them can do it. And the percentage of kids that improve from, like, and I don't care if they're starting at pitch matching problems, like they just don't match pitch, then we start them there. And if their goal for the end of first semester is just be matching pitch, and they got an A in the class still, their first sight reading factory could be rhythm only, because pitch is such a challenge for them. Great, as long as you're starting somewhere. And that gets them to the point where they're, by 10th, 11th, 12th grade, they're all at that level 4 or higher. So yeah, go ahead. You mean like custom levels?
What I do in my fair trial.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and magically, that's the next slide we're on. Okay. I like to start with the group stuff, because in a lot of ways that's also mirrors how I set up the classroom, because I mentioned, I think in the first few minutes, that I just got done, or I'm almost done, screening each of my beginning kids. And that takes many, many days in the bigger classes with the 50 girls or whatever, but it's absolutely worth the time. But I wouldn't do it on the first day of school, because I'm not going to ask kids that don't know me to come into a dark, scary office and sing by themselves for me on the first day of school. I had to do that experiment during the pandemic, and it did not go well. Sign on to my class online and sing into this microphone and send it to me so I can give you feedback. We lost so many kids during that time. So I don't do any individual stuff with kids in the first month. It's all group work. I will. In fact, I'm going to talk about it right now. I'm going to kind of maybe even do some role playing again and have you guys try some. But then 2 episodes that I have on my show, episode 69 and 219, are the deep dives on my individual assessment process, including having some students of mine that had their parents give permission to have their tests recorded. And so you can actually see some real students doing that. So basically, what we do is we get that month or so of group work first, where not only am I establishing terminology and things that they're going to learn how to do, but I'm also just getting them to trust me, of course. A lot of relationship building that happens before they ever sing by themselves, a lot of connection and explaining to them why we're doing it. That's a very important part. Then, the part I'm doing right now back at school is I'm bringing each of them individually into my office, and I'm interviewing them, essentially, on how they feel like the reading process every day is going for them. So I'll ask them these questions. I'll say, so when we do Sight Reading Factory every day on the screen, in class, and everybody else is looking around at the screen to try to figure out what note they sing, is that a confusion moment for you? Or do you feel like you're getting that? Like, do you know what your first note is every day? And based on their answer, sometimes it's if I just look at my neighbor's hands, like they would never, like in the class in front of everyone else, they would never admit those things. But then when they're one-on-one with me, then I'll get all kinds of fascinating information from them where like, oh, I thought you were getting it, but like, oh, I'm just looking at so-and-so's hands. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's helpful. So then I ask them, so once you do have your starting note, whether it's because you stole it from your neighbor or because you did it yourself or whatever, once you have that, and I say 1, 2, ready, sing, and everybody's reading across the screen, do you feel like your eyes are able to keep track of where you are? Or do you feel like you're getting lost or not sure where to look? And I just listen. I just listen to how they think about that, and I learn so much during that time just from those 2 questions. And based on their answers and how clueless they sound, I decide, is this freshman, these are 9th graders, is this freshman going to read a level 1 first or a level 2 first, based on their answers? And I explain to them that the purpose of this is it's a pre-test. It is not for a grade, but it is not optional. Everybody's got to do it. But the goal is to set your goal for your first test at the end of the semester, because we make sight singing part of their final exam for both semesters. Okay, so in that October or end of September pre-test, I'm just trying to determine for each kid, again, based on my reading rope thing, how many of those issues are they struggling with so that I can set a goal for them. And they tend to then take that meeting. I can't even explain to you how positive this practice has been, because I think 10 years, I'm 10 years into that. I'm 15 years into a cappella rehearsals, but I'm 10 years into individual assessment. So many kids that I'm 100% in my earlier career would have quit choir because they were the kid that didn't get it in class and never would have gotten it. And the smart kid would have just gotten it the whole time. And they were like, I'm just not very good at this. But after that individual first meeting, they leave my office with like some kind of light bulb just clicked. Like, oh, like it was that easy the whole time? Yeah, it was. But they have this internal narrative that says that it's not easy because every day in class, they're not the first one to get it. Someone else gets it. And so then they develop this mythology in their own brain about how bad they are at it. But if they didn't work individually, they would never know that they actually can do this and that they're actually pretty good at it, but it's just that they're not as brave. And I think in choral music education for generations, one of my biggest criticisms of us as a field is we have preferentialized, we prop up kids based on their personality, not their musicianship. We find the kid who is willing and brave to sing out in middle school, and from that point on, they are identified as the best kid in choir. And then the shy kid, and this is where my passion comes from, my daughter would fall to the bottom of so many choir classrooms around the country because she's shy, she's scared, and when she sings, she barely makes noise until she knows the notes. Well, this was her in middle school. She's not that way anymore because she took my class for 3 years. And now she can read Sight Reading Factory level 5s. And she has a beautiful soprano voice, and it's rich and it's colorful, and she's starting to sound just like her mom and all of those things. But because I'm 100% sure that if she were in a choir classroom that did not do individual instruction, she would have felt dumb forever, because she would always be the third or fourth kid in her row to get the notes right. And that starts to internalize within kids very quickly that, well, this girl's good at it, I'm the last one to the party. So we explain that to kids in their individual meeting. They get that speech from me, or some very short, quick version of that speech very quickly, which is that I'm here to help you get better, because I think that if you don't work on this by yourself, then you're going to always think that you're not very good at it. And so they leave my office after struggling usually through their first level 1 or their level 2. You have a lot of guidance from me on either what that next note sounds like, or I'll make sure you're going line to line. Well, that's a skip. If it's line to space, that's a step. I'm showing them all that stuff. For a lot of kids, if they're not in band, they don't know those things. And they pretend to know those things in class because everybody else around them knows those things. And so I get to start to see where their gaps are. And then I just set a goal for them in December, and the next time they come back to do that same activity, I just tell them that the goal is that you don't need my help anymore to do that. Whether it's Sight Reading Factory Level 1, whether it's rhythm only, whether it's a custom exercise for a tenor unchanged voice boy who really just needs to read only middle C, D, and E. In Sight Reading Factory, you can do that. This kid only can sing these notes. And so we're still going to give him an exercise that he can read successfully by December, then sing it right and sing it on time, and then move on to the next level. What we do is essentially, based on the data of how they do on that first test, we set their goal for the next test, which is the next semester. And then as long as they stay in choir, they're just continuing to draw upon their data from the last time. And I'm treating them the way our language reading colleagues in elementary school do, which is what level should this kid be reading so that they can do it alone and they can do it independently without anybody's help. You do kind of have to be careful when you're individually assessing kids that they are being loaded with why we do this and why it's none of anyone's business what level you are. And what matters is that every single kid is getting better at this, because we are a choir. We are here to perform together. And what happens to the quality of the choir when every single kid, even if there's a level 1 next to a level 3, but if they're all getting better, what happens to the choir? Well, the choir gets better. Yeah, that's why we're doing this. We're trying to make sure that the level 3 kid who sits next to a level 1 kid doesn't become a level 4 kid, and then a level 5 kid, and a level 6 kid, while that kid is still at level 1, because that's what would happen. And so once I give them that very impassioned speech, they then tend to get it. And we'll talk about how I grade those as well, which is up here next. So we assess twice a year. I do not grade on exactly correct the first time, and that is crucial, because we don't grade English readers that way either. For example, I know that for All-State Choir, because you guys are in Missouri too, you guys have the same system, same little sheet that we have with the key signatures and the 1, 2, ready, go, and the 10 points, and it's either right or wrong. My kids, by the time they're ready for that audition, are ready to go straight through without stopping and thinking, and they do get it right, and that's not a coincidence. It's because we read a cappella. And it's also because my kids are not stressed to sight read. They are not stressed.
Haven't already, I really think it's time for you to ditch the bulky sight reading books, the paper, all of the things that are already in the kids' folders in your classroom, because it's not customizable to what they need in the moment. Sight Reading Factory allows this and so much more, including auto-assessment for at-home assignments, no more grading them individually. They can be graded in the moment. So use the Chorosophy checkout code, Chorosophy. When you check out, it'll give you a 10% discount every time you get a membership for yourself and for all of your students, which is really, really important so they can do this at home.
Okay? And the reason that they're not stressed is because I'm not grading them every day or every time we do this on correct the first time. I'm grading them on independent problem-solving rehearsal skills. Okay? So when they come in to do their appropriate level for me in December, the first time, what I'm actually grading is, can you sing the right notes and rhythms in this exercise without my help? That's what I'm grading. So if they go through and they sing do, mi, they see a bunch of, because level 2s will have skips in it, and they sing their do, mi, but it comes out as do, re, and I'm just sitting there nodding along, and oh, that's do, re, do, mi. They're still at 50 out of 50 on their grade, because as long as I didn't have to step in and point out to them, actually that was do, re, you got to go back and fix that, then they lose a point. But if I don't have to say anything because they're self-diagnosing, then they're still at 100% of their grade. Now, of course, they go to the All-State audition and they lose that point. But I'm not here to train All-Staters. Now, the happy result of that is lots of All-Staters. But that's not why I'm doing it. I don't teach them to the test, so to speak. And so the result of that, when I say they're not stressed to sight read,
I think a lot of times kids get stressed to sight read because they know it's all or nothing the first time. If I go sing this, and if I make a mistake, I just lost. Like, it's a competition, right? And so they bring a lot of anxiety into them, and guess what anxiety does to your ability to sight read? It makes it harder, because now I've got to quiet that inner beast, and that's one more thing to do. Whereas when my kids go to the all-district audition to do their all-state sight reading thing, and what I see is my kids sitting on their phones, rolling their eyes, waiting in line, and they walk in and they sing, and they come out and they say, yeah, I got 22 out of 24. Did the wrong rhythm and measure 2 and measure 4 on the second one. And I was like, oh, okay, good job, nice work. And they walk on. That's their approach, because that's how I teach them to do it in class. Whereas the other kids are sitting there going, and then they walk in, and it's like every year. I mean, this has been. I notice it every year, because I want my kids to walk in there as if that is so old hat to them and so not stressful to them that I know that they're going to be in that mental space of like just calm. And so when we do our tests, essentially that's one of the things that I give them as a tip, which is that your mistakes will compound themselves. You'll make more and more mistakes the more your anxiety bubbles up. So what you have to teach yourself to do is make a mistake and then smile. That's what I train them to do. Make a mistake and then smile, and then just do it again. And what ends up happening over time is that mistakes just become less and less, because they're not fighting that barrier of anxiety. Now, one story I do not tell my kids, but I will tell you guys because you're adults. My wife Beth and I were both choral singers, and we used to be in the professional choral singing scene when we were younger, before we had kids, around Kansas City. And we'd show up to, a church choir rehearsal or a pro choir rehearsal or whatever. And when we were in our early 20s, one of our favorite things to do was go grab a margarita right before the rehearsal. And I'll tell you that some of my best sight reading ever is on one margarita. Now, 2 or 3 margaritas would be a different story, but karaoke becomes that. But sight reading on one margarita, I'm blasting through everything, and I'm not making any mistakes because I have inhibited my anxiety. I am just chill at that point. And so I'm making actually less mistakes because of simply my state of mind. And what ends up happening a lot of times is we grade kids on their ability to control their anxiety, and then tell them we're grading them on sight reading. But what we're really doing is grading their personality again. Okay? And so I'm trying to lay the groundwork for kids of what it means to go. I mean, just like, even why do kids go take an ACT prep class? They're trying to get good at the test. They're trying to go in, they're trying to reduce their anxiety towards taking the ACT by going in and practicing the routine enough times. And that's crucially important for kids too. Now, like I said, I really very strongly believe that we don't do this because of all-state choir. However, I am very passionate about the idea that in a lot of places, literacy wouldn't be taught at all if they weren't trying to get kids into the all-state choir. So I understand that tension, but that's one of the reasons that I advocate for an approach that is very much not about teaching to the test. It's about teaching kids to believe that they can contribute to the choirs they're in, and that my voice will matter in this choir because I can open up the music too, and I can do that also. And it's really about that individual aspect of it. So then, like I said, their grade comes from 50 out of 50 is just write notes and rhythms with no help from me. Within reason, obviously I've got to get to all the kids. So if a kid is really, really struggling and to get through it, and they can't get through it at the end in the amount of time that I have, that does rarely happen. But usually by that point, I have figured out that I moved them ahead a level too soon. That's usually the way that manifests itself. If a kid is because these tests typically take 4 minutes for each kid. If a kid is stretching into 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and they're still trying to work it through it, and I'm having to help them or resist helping them, or singing occasional notes to them or whatever, then I usually make a note. If I have time, I'm going to call that kid back in, and we're going to do a less hard exercise, because that is probably a me problem. I got excited about that kid's voice, and I really wanted him to be at level 3 by a certain time, and so my bias came in, and I tried to nudge him ahead. He needs to be ready for chamber choir because I need that voice or whatever. It's usually a boy, and I'm like, okay, let's bring him back. Questions or thoughts so far about this? Yeah.
So do this testing for
Yep.
you.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good question. So I don't do weekly assigned anything outside of class. I do quarterly. Now that auto assessment popped in, that's what Julie and I were talking about earlier. Now that auto assessment is a feature on Sight Reading Factory, I do a quarterly auto assessment assignment. So our kids are going to do their first one next week, in October, and then they'll do another one in December, which helps them prepare for their final also. But keep in mind, if my whole grading philosophy is you get to stop and solve your own problems, auto assessment won't let you do that, right? So what my new, probably even newer than these slides are, the new thing I added in is that I have a level for each kid that is their final exam level, and now they also have an auto assessment level. So if they're level 3 on a final exam, which tells them that they can stop and fix things and solve their own problems, etc., well, then the level 3 is appropriate. But if it's 1, 2, ready, go, no stopping, and it has to be graded by a computer, you're not ready for level 3 if that's what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I give them a level 1, right? And so the kids, at the beginning, after the pre-tests are done, they each get an email, like an auto-generated email from me from like a spreadsheet, basically, where I put all the information in. And they get an email that says, you are level 3 for your testing, you are level 1 for your auto assessment assignments. And that way they just know how to set it up.
And then do they receive whatever auto assessment grade they get?
Pass, fail. It's 10 points out of 10 or 0 points out of 0. Those are your only two choices. And so the way I grade it is that they are done at 90% accuracy or higher, okay? Or they're done on their 6th try, and they simply hit submit on their 6th try no matter what score it is. And either way, both of those kids, 42% on the 6th try, 100% in the gradebook. 92% on your first try, 100% on the gradebook. They're all getting an A. Because the point of those assignments is just to incentivize practicing. That's all it is. I'm not trying to get this is a phrase I have to use a lot with kids in this system, is that, guys, I am not talent scouting. I am not talent scouting right now because they come in and they, even in our program that is used to doing this for the last 15 years or whatever, their teenagers are still teenagers. And so when they submit their recording of their voice to me or they come in and sing, they are so worried that I'm not going to be impressed. And so I can tell it's like they bring the anxiety, and I'll stop them. I'm not talent scouting right now. I'm here to help you get better. There's nothing you could sing right now. Nothing could come out of your mouth that would surprise me right now. I've heard it all before. There's if you sing something really pretty, I've heard that before too. If you sing something really bad, I've heard that before. So let's get past that. And usually that calms them down because like they think that they're going to submit this exercise that's a 42%, and they're going to like, hey, Mr. Muntz will be so disappointed. Like, no, they get the same high five that everybody else gets because you can't get better if you don't start practicing. You've got to start somewhere. They get a 0. Yeah. If they turn it in late, because we don't have a lot of homework like an English class does, so my late work policy is pretty lax because it doesn't cause me a lot of issues if they turn it in late. And also because it's pass-fail and it's mostly graded by the computer, it's just an easy thing. So I will take it because, again, the goal is that I just want them to do it. I just want them to do it. And last year was the first year of auto assessment, so honestly, I don't want to present my system as like a perfectly worked out system yet. Some of these other things I have worked out for a long time, but that one is still new. So far I've liked it, but I would say last year we had probably 75% of the kids that did it the first time, and the other 25 just took the 0. And then the second time we did it, a little bit better, like 80% of them did it the second time. I'm anticipating this year will even be better, just because, again, kids get used to expectations, and when it's a new expectation, they rebel at first. So I'm anticipating, but I'll see. You'd have to check back with me in a year at the end of this year to see how well we do with it this year. But that's how I grade it. Now the testing aspect of it, I had one in the pre-test last week. I had one crier. That's pretty normal. Just that the anxiety of singing in front of another human being at all is so much that the tears just start coming, and that's. In that situation, I typically just let the kid cry it out, and it puts me behind schedule, but we deal with it. And sometimes they just go out to the restroom and they come back and try it again. They all eventually do it though, and it's amazing to see the empowerment that happens, especially with the crying kid, because she doesn't know this yet, but I already know that she will be reading fluently and not be scared in about a year. And I also know that she will probably stay in my class because I can tell how she rehearses. And I also know that in 12th grade, she and I will have a conversation on her way out the door, and I will remind her that she cried the first time, and she will probably not remember because her confidence will have grown so much by 12th grade that she wouldn't be able to imagine herself crying during this time. It's a really cool thing. The individual work has become some of my favorite part of the job.
During that pre-test time, like you were saying, like there's kind of like that interview. Is that separate from the pre-test, or is that together? Like you interview and then like, all right, let's try singing this example here. Like, is it all the same?
It's all in the same time. So as soon as they come in the room, I'm asking them questions. I've got Sight Reading Factory up on my kind of enlarged laptop screen, and I've got level 1 or 2 ready based on their answers. Sometimes I have a level 3. I typically will have a level 3 ready also for ninth graders if I notice that kid is like super sharp during class. Like they're leading everything, and some like vocally leading everything. And so if it's, again, usually a band kid, I might do level 3, but almost always I start with level 2. Discover that level 2 is almost always a good place for kids to start if they're in ninth grade, but then back it down to level 1 if it's too hard. And one of the things, things people ask me a lot is, how do I decide if it's too hard? So like, what are my criteria for was this level 2 appropriate challenge, or was this level 2 too easy, too hard? Basically, what I'm listening for is how much of the exercise I have to guide them towards correct stuff the very first time they've ever done it. So how much are they already doing independently? So if I'm, pretty simple rubric really, if I'm jumping in every single measure to get them back on track, that exercise is too hard, okay? Now, that is not the same as they are making mistakes every measure. Because if it's level 1, for example, and it's just like quarter note do re mi's up the scale, they might sing do and then pause, re. Notice that their rhythm is not correct, right? But that's okay, actually, and we actually need to give them time for that. But what I'm listening for is, no, they're getting it. Like, they're getting it. They're the same way a little kid would if it was cat, right? We wouldn't tell that little kid that he's not learning to read because it's not on time. We would allow him the time and space to sound that out. And so if they're able to get from one note to the next note without my help, then I'm going to look at that and go, that's an appropriate level of challenge. Now all this kid needs to do is practice that level a bunch of times until they don't need to stop and think all the time. They're just working towards fluency. And once they're accurate, fluent, and independent at that level, then I move them to the next level where they will then have to be confused again. And that's actually the point. We want to constantly keep them in that liminal phase of confusion and just thinking a little bit, but not thinking so hard that they can't do it and that they're freaking out and that they're falling behind. So that's kind of how that works. Any other questions on this part? Sure. Yeah. There's a lot, and then as I've been putting this kind of stuff out for years now, and I've had the benefit of hearing from so many colleagues, hundreds of colleagues, that have tried to figure out different ways to implement this kind of stuff in environments where they are not a team teacher, like a big high school program might be. And with a lot of people that reach out to me to ask these types of questions, I honestly believe the greatest sin we're ever taught to do is you can't just put on a movie. Put on a movie. Even if it takes a week, it is worth it. The speed with which your kids will start to learn after they've got individual feedback at any level, you'll make up for that week in spades. That will be time well spent. Now, of course, if you can do something other than a movie, like get an administrator to approve a sub for a week, for example, well, why do you need that? Well, because I'm a teacher and I don't know how my kids are doing individually, and I need a chance to see that and make that argument, make the scientific argument, make the pedagogical argument.
If you had a student teacher,
Sure.
then that opportunity.
Yep. Is that like an advisory time? I do that sometimes too. Yeah. I've heard of people, like I said, coming up with all kinds of solutions. Administrators approving a sub is one that I've been hearing a lot lately from people who have been able to pull that off. Other times it's just like if a school has an accompanist, then sometimes the accompanist can keep things going. Sometimes, but like the putting on a movie thing is kind of like really just, I say that as a last resort, just to communicate to people that even if you had to do that, I would still say do it because it's worth it. So moving on now, we have some chance to sing. Are you guys ready to sing? So all the stuff we've talked about all morning, none of it matters at all. None of it matters at all if they don't rehearse that way also. So if you teach solfege and you teach sight reading and they get really good at the all-state assessment and all those types of things, all those things are happening, and then we pull out our sheet music for the concert and we're playing the piano notes for them again. They're just not going to see the relevance of it, number one. And number two, we then start denying them the opportunity to have all these neural pathway formations happening. So the process from the sight reading continues into the music making. And so we're going to do a little rehearsal. I printed out a simple little song. It's a 3-part a cappella because we've got some sopranos and altos and a dude.
I'll sing baritone.
Yeah, feel free to pick a part that makes sense. All right, everybody. You're going to be really mad at me, but I think we should stand up.
Sing and stand.
Can we go up to the risers?
No.
In this next portion of the episode, towards the end, you're just going to hear a small portion of that rehearsal boot camp. You can't really see it on the YouTube channel because I didn't want to film these teachers singing and rehearsing and trying to pretend like they are teenagers, but that's what I asked them to do. They're being handed a piece of music. They've been asked to pretend to be their own students. And then I led a rehearsal the way I would in my class. Of course, it's not a perfect simulacrum of teenagers because we are not teenagers, but I think you'll enjoy it. And as always, there are longer form versions of a lot of these presentations over on the Patreon. So if you're a Patreon subscriber or a Substack paid subscriber, you can access those as well. Now, I don't care. Doesn't matter. If you want to...
Yeah, I went to Missouri State, and I felt like every semester or every year at least, I was going and doing practicum. But like here in St. Louis, I never like get anything from local universities. Like, hey, I have some students that need practicum placements. Like, I just don't know if they don't do that here with the college.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Not sure. All right, we have who's going to do soprano? It's not very high. I think a C is the highest note. Okay, that's great. And then are you guys law-based minor people or do-based minor people? Law. So then we'll just read it as if it were the key of C, law-based. And so what we're going to do now is I'm essentially going to take you through a rehearsal of this piece as I would in my class. Okay? Now, in order to make this make sense, I would like for you guys to challenge yourself to not be college-trained music educators, okay? Which means that you kind of work into the rehearsal some of the typical things your kids might do in these types of scenarios, which could be breathy singing, it could be slightly out of tune notes, but we're also going to, grab ass. Yes, I know, it's the weirdest thing. Okay, so we're going to start with just a C, because we're going to read this in the key of C. Sing do. Yes, and I'd have a chance to ask my first question. Which do octave do you think you should sing here, and why?
These are up high, I guess.
Uh-huh. So I would sing the do closer to my note, if I were you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stupid.
So I'm role playing too much.
No, you're actually doing a great job. You're doing a great job. Okay, sing do again. Now, how many do's do we hear? I hear one. I would probably want to hear two here. Okay, yep. Okay, good. So now we're going to sing. Let's all sing the do that we sang first. That middle C right there in the middle comfortable part of our voice. Go. Good. Now read my hands. You can do it down here. Yeah. Do we agree? Do we all agree? Yeah, okay, now we're agreeing. What note does the song start on? What solfege will we call it? We will call it... It's a ta, okay. Which solfege is it? T. According to my calculations, it's a T. That is right. Okay, so sing your do from before. So what does T sound like? Okay. All right, good. Now, right now, you're down an octave, okay. But for right now, that's going to be okay, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Which voice will we be in? We'll be thinking about that. Okay, now we're going to audiate the exercise, the song. We're going to audiate. And usually I'll have them do that first, but we won't do the whole song. So let's audiate from the first measure, and also I would probably have them read it in 4 rather than in 2 at first. So let's go all the way from the beginning to measure 13. From the beginning to measure 13. Let's do it this speed. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and then I would stop them because in my class the hand signs are not optional.
My bad.
Of us to do the soprano line, or are we only doing our line?
Go and all sing together.
Okay.
Yeah, at first. Yep, that's a good question. No, you're on yours. Yep. Let's use our hands. And the way I explain that to them is that's how I know that they're audiating. That's the only way to prove it. Or else they could just stand there and. Right? Yeah. Try it. 1, 2, and 3. Stop. Where are we?
Me.
The fourth measure. Start there. Yeah, we're in measure 4. And I'll do stuff like that a lot at the beginning too, just to check and see, right? I told him 13, but I lied. Very much on purpose. I want to stop along the way. So let's start at measure 4 and keep going. Ready? And go. I'll see that's 7, stop. There we go at 13. Okay, sing your do again from the beginning. That's good. And every once in a while I'll stop to narrate. So in my beginning 9th grade classes, at the very beginning of the year, they won't be able to remember do. At the very beginning of the year. That only takes about a week. It only takes about a week. And they get really excited. Because they'll remember the first day of school. Do you remember when I played do and then I like said something for like 20 seconds and then you tried to sing it again later and you couldn't. And then today, did you notice that I played do once at the beginning of class and I haven't gone back to the piano since? Like, whoa. That usually takes about a week. Okay, so sing your starting note then. If that was do, what does T sound like? Here we go. 1, 2, let's sing. Good first 5 measures. What were some things that, in the soprano line, what were some things you disagreed with each other about? So the syncopated rhythms we disagreed on. What would be, so in my class, we would do like a Takadimi solution probably for that, but in your class it might be a 1 and 2 and 3 kind of a solution. Whatever it is that works for your language is fine. I would have them go ta dee dee ta 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 dee dee ta several times probably, and then okay, now let's sing it again. Ready and mi la, and they would go back in and probably have fixed that rhythm. And I would ask the tenors and basses, now in real life tenors and basses, real life 9th grade tenors and basses, what probably would have happened, do you think, on this line?
Well, they wouldn't have made that jump.
Probably would not have found the pitch right away.
I think they would have.
Yep, they would have guessed something wrong on the way down. And then even once they did get to the correct me, they probably would have lost track of counting on the long notes, right? So then I would ask them, what tools do we have to solve that? So usually if it's a T, la, la, and then some kind of jump, me. Okay, well, let's fill in the gaps. T, la, now sing a scale down to me. So, fa, mi. La, so, fa, mi. And I'll just use my hands and just show it to them a bunch of times. Bim, bam, bim, bam. They're sounding it out. They're sounding it out. And not because I sang, no, it's actually la, it's actually me. I try to avoid that.
Skip a whole line together.
And then we would do some of those fixes, and then we just, and I try to keep the pacing quick so that we'll do a few of those fixes. Let's do the rhythm fix for the soprano line. Let's do that scale for the guys. Let's take another crack at it. And then I will usually say something like, all right, if you made 5 mistakes in that first attempt, this time only make 3. Okay? 1, 2, and go. Ti la la ti do so. Yes, good. And then I would stop to point out some really cool things that are happening, because even beginners will start to do this. Did you notice that we had a lot less trouble with the rhythm in measure 11 that time? Anyone want to guess why?
Because we did it again.
And we're pattern recognizing. We are starting to recognize patterns. We had to do all that Takadimi stuff the first time to get it all solved, and then they start to get excited too because they're learning to pattern recognize. And then if we have altos, go ahead and let's try the alto line now, okay? So the other thing that might be interesting to point out here too is that the guys, the beginning tenor basses, will also be doing something that kind of sounds like this. And they're trying to bring the wrong register of their voice in. After lunch, we're going to talk a lot more about that, but I would usually give them some kind of a vocal affect to try. So I would say, maybe bass, please, I hope this doesn't offend somebody. Actually, it may or may not. I call it private school voice. Sorry, Daddy. My grade point average fell below 4.2 again. Sorry, Papa. And I call that private school voice, and they mimic it. They mimic it pretty well. Right?
That's like when I told Mrs. Doubtfire, and they don't know who that is anymore.
Right.
They don't get it.
And, or my butt. I'll make them mimic back. My butler forgot to do my homework last night. And they'll say that. And then I call that private school voice, and I teach them that as a tool to use when the notes are at the top of the bass clef, but not loud. And then they start to sing it in that kind of that space, and they found it in their speech voice first in a way that's very non-stressful, and then they can start to find that placement for that type of note, and then we put that in our toolbox of when we see notes in that part of the staff, but they're not loud. It's not, hey, Tony! It's not that. That's calling voice. We sometimes need that energy, but we don't need that here where we're going to bring up too much tension. So let's try that. Will you guys sing T-Law in your private school voice? T-Law. You get a little bit more of a fluty tone that's sustainable, that they don't push. Then I would ask them, okay, tenors and basses, when should you leave that voice? Because then it goes way down back into our speech voice, which AKA chest voice. So then I might have them do another vocal affect. I might say, I like to make these up on the spot usually, but sorry, Papa, I was going hunting. Go. Sorry, Papa, I was going hunting. And then now they're finding their chest voice. Can you make that voice happen on the me? So we don't want to overdo it. We don't want to pound on it. We just want to feel the resonance change as we go down. Okay, let's try it, tenors and basses. Ready? And sing. And try to get them to be aware visually, like like a map. Like in this part of the staff, it should feel like this. And that's going to be important for their reading acquisition. Okay, let's go on. You guys are doing great. Let's go on to measure 6. Let's go on to measure 6. And this time, altos, you're going to jump in with us. 1, 2, measure 6, and go. Then we would point out that we get some material coming back later, but we also would stop and say, oh, we had a bunch of disagreements in there, right? There were disagreements in measure 12 for the tenors and basses, but rather than me point out all those things, this might be a time in a rehearsal, in a concert repertoire, this is how we're learning it basically, where I would say, okay, so there were too many problems to name through there, so why don't you guys all take 30 seconds with your partners and try to solve some of those problems. Go.
When he was talking, I was sight reading, so I figured out that was C.
10 seconds.
So I made the rest.
And that happens. Here we go. Time's up. Measure 6. Same thing as before. If you made 5 mistakes this time, make only 2. And what would that represent? If we only made 2 mistakes instead of 5, we would be getting better. 1, 2, ready, and sing. Chest voice and private school. It's tenors and basses sing this. Impressive. Yes, and then and we're gonna have to all sing. We're gonna have to all sing that. Even the vegetarians. Yeah. Solfege jokes are the best. Okay, now, even with beginners, by this point, we've done. Of course, we're simulating this because we're adults, and that it makes the experiment not quite accurate. But you get the idea. With the sequence being, we make a singing attempt. I ask them questions. What were the problems? What are the tools we know? Usually from our sight reading factory time at the beginning of class, I've taught them these tools. Should this be a Takadimi problem? Should this be a sing the scale problem? Should this be a count singing problem? Whatever. And we've done several repetitions. Even on the first day of looking at a new song like this, I would probably already be going to words. Okay? So let's go back and try it on the words. Sing your solfege notes first. And so everybody sing their first 2 solfege notes. Ready? And go. Now sing those notes again on the words the day. Go. I'm going to try to sing the words. 1, and sing. Right, beautiful. You guys are doing great. Great little choir. Now, in real life, what do you think happens? What do you think happens on day 1 when they sing the words the first time? It does not go that well. Be more specific.
Things for them to read.
Correct. And what types of mistakes would usually show up all of a sudden?
Wanes, they would freak out on that first line.
Wanes.
You mean because of
The words.
Yep. They would start to go, what the heck does this mean? Right?
It's gonna be forgot, like you said, like the rhythm will be forgot, or the soul,
Yep.
like something's gonna go.
Or a note that was right before is no longer right now,
Yeah.
because they're going to replace it with a different note because they're going to stop thinking about solfege. So what I would do then, but even they still need to see from the very beginning of the process. I really believe that we shouldn't be doing solfege only for 3 weeks because they need to see it layering back and forth and being relevant the whole time. So I might try something. There's lots of things I do, but I might go, all right, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, the 1s are singing solfege. The 2s are singing words. Let's try it again. Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1s are solfege. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Now switch jobs. Keep going. Right, yeah, right. So I'll just, right. So now for kids, and that was not a good example for the altos, I apologize. But for those kids, having the solfege then as a layer in their brain, I'm essentially trying to teach them to have multiple audio tracks playing at once, which is that, okay, I've got the solfege track, but I need to still hear that while the words are happening so that I'm not just guessing. And so that's a good scaffold. It's like a baby step between, or sometimes could just be I've done other ones. Actually, let's try this one, but let's go to measure 6 so the altos can have a better example. Let's start at measure 6. This time, even numbered measures are solfege. Odd numbered measures are words.
Okay.
Well, what would your high school kid say then? Right when it gets hard, evens are solfege. Evens are solfege. And I would almost always do it that way because I want them to start on solfege, establish the solfege, and then kind of leave it and come back. Let's just try it. Let's try it. By the way, what do you guys honestly think about my outfit?
It's great.
It's like, okay. because this morning when I got up to leave, my wife said, "Are you really going to wear that?" That's what she said. So I just have to bring some data back. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of a conversation. If you are still hearing my voice, that means you're one of the MVPs, one of the diehards, one of the real ones, as the kids say. So if you are willing on the way out to check out a few different ways that you can help me continue to make this show high quality. One, use the promo code. That's the biggest one. At Sight Reading Factory, at mymusicfolders.com, at mychoirropes.com, at graphitepublishing.com, and endeavormusicpublishing.com. All of those take the Choralosophy checkout code, and of course now the newest one is 3-Minute Theory. You can get a 15% discount when you enter Choralosophy at checkout there. And of course, going to Apple Podcasts and leaving a positive review is very helpful there, and sharing the episodes to your colleagues in real life and on social media. All of those things are incredibly helpful and allow me to continue to create this resource for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.